We are starting a new...
Average Joe Schriner still believes he can make a difference as he again runs for President of the United States. Schriner lived in Bluffton for many years. He ran for president in 2000, 2004, and is again running in 2008. He and his family have traveled 80,000 miles in the past 8 years in their mobile home. Schriner says his family and his campaign staff, his family is his campaign staff, and the campaign survives on donations. Schriner made a stop at Jim's restaurant in Delphus today. He's been in all 88 Ohio counties twice and will spend the next 6 months in Ohio on his Buckeye Back Roads tour.
My wife and I were concerned parents, actually concerned parents from the Midwest, who think that right now the culture is spinning out of control, the planet's spinning out of control. We happen to believe global warming's real, and we want to make sure that there's a world left for our kids. And so we live in the inner city of Cleveland right now, and there's kids sleeping on alleys, and we just don't think that should be right. We're concerned parents not only about our kids, but everybody's kids. And so one town at a time, instead of joining the PTO, we decided, why don't we run for president?
Different than the last two presidential elections, Schriner believes he'll have the 5,000 signatures necessary to be on the ballot in Ohio. He was a write-in the previous two elections, so he doesn't know how many votes he got. He's running as an independent, but is one of 11 finalists to be the Green Party nominee. He believes he is making a difference.
As an example, just in this area, because of its flatness and the wind blowing on a pretty continual level, this would be a perfect place for wind turbines. And as president, I would subsidize farmers putting in one row of wind turbines on each of their farms. And so, say somebody hears this on the show and says, you know, that's a good idea, why don't we do that in Ada? And then it spreads out from there. We're actually changing the world one town at a time as we're doing this. So there's some method to what we're doing.
When we come back, an amazing story of survival.
And as NBC 26 reporter Larry Salazar shows us, it's a journey that redefines the old adage of hitting the campaign trail.
Wisconsin, it looked really flat on the map, but there's a lot of hills out here.
Pushing and pedaling on the road to the White House, 45-year-old Joe Schriner, a.k.a. Average Joe.
I'm running for president of the United States. We think there should be a flat tax. If you like what you read, tell some people, will you? Okay.
Stops from town to town.
Take care.
Campaigning for the U.S. presidency.
Society's getting nuts, Larry. In between the drugs and the youth violence and pollution levels, it's just not a safe place to be raising kids anymore.
Armed with that fundamental idea, Average Joe sold his home.
Put your shoes on first, Joseph.
Quit his job.
We're going to a place called Campbellsport, Joseph.
Took his wife and kids and began a journey across America. With Old Glory sticking out of his bike trailer, fluttering in the wind, this average man paints a picture of what he believes to be the future. That is pro-life, pro-environment, and pro-flat tax.
Occasionally what happens is people will look at you and say, well, what are you, nuts?
But Average Joe and his family are not deterred.
And people have really responded.
We think the climate is right for that.
Even though he and his family are living off contributions picked up along the 17,000-mile campaign trail, they remain enthusiastic. They also know this is an uphill climb.
It's gonna pan out, Larry. We're gonna win.
But this average family will take extraordinary steps to go the extra mile. Larry Salazar, NBC 26 News, Plymouth.
Well, actually campaigning right up until Election Day.
His name is picking up, and today a candidate making a run for the White House made a stopover in Duluth.
Stacey Eckets reports he's your average Joe in more ways than one.
Good. I'm running for president of the country. Joe Schriner. Did you? Yeah. Thank you. We're going to need it. It's kind of an uphill deal we got going. But
It just wouldn't be a campaign without the signs and the handshakes.
take care. See ya.
Joe Schriner is your average Joe. And peeking at his campaign vehicle, it's also his campaign slogan.
From the average Joe standpoint, I cut my own grass. You know, we eat at Mexican restaurants because the budget is such that the chips are free.
During a stop at the sanitary district in Duluth,
Turn the handle.
Joe and his family are learning about environmental breakthroughs.
As we travel, we'll talk about this in other places with the hopes of planting seeds, about recycling, with the hope, and some of the innovations they were telling me about.
Average Joe and his wife come from Ohio and have 3 children who are the inspiration for their political platform.
Liz and I are running as concerned parents, and we want a world that's better not only for our kids, but the kids in the country and also the kids in the third world.
Joe admits he doesn't have millions of dollars or big money backers, and his entourage is small but loyal.
This is it. This is the entourage right here.
And when it comes to his campaign promises, he says he definitely practices what he preaches.
We can't ask people to cut back lifestyle-wise unless we're living it. And I mean, it can't, for a family of 5, it would be hard to get any smaller.
That's right. Joe, Joseph, Jonathan, Liz, and Sarah all live in this 1974 Dodge.
Step this way.
For the campaign crew, it's a home.
Right here, Dan, we have the kitchen.
And it's campaign headquarters.
Here we have the presidential wing office. There we go.
And it's filled with all sorts of amenities.
Occasionally, when we do want to get away for a little while, we do have the Air Force One helicopter.
So there you have it. A grassroots campaign determined to make a difference. One city at a time. An uphill battle this team is ready to climb. In Duluth, Stacey Eckes, News 6.
Joe, by the way, is an independent candidate. He's running without any party affiliation.
Joe Schriner, he and his family are here from Ohio. They're here on the Central Coast, traveling across the country in their mobile home. But unlike some of the other candidates you've seen, Schreiner's campaign is small, and it's being funded by personal donations. Action News reporter Shelley Haar spent the day with Joe Schriner today. She's outside our Monterey newsroom with his story.
Dan, his voice is quiet, but the message is loud, calling America back to family values and stronger faith. But can high hopes pave the way to the presidency? The average Joe, as he likes to be called, seems to think so.
All right. Okay, Joe. Yeah, do me a favor. Yeah, tell some people about us back in Ohio, would you?
This is how Joe Schriner spends most of his days, on the streets, building ties to voters through a common bond.
We have a shoestring budget, and we just always have just enough to get to the next place. And a lot of American people right now in the average sector, they usually just have enough money to make it to the end of the month, you know, and so they can relate to us a lot more than people driving around in the limousines and flying the Learjets in and out. Would you?
One of those buttons?
Yeah, hold on.
Schreiner's platform is all about getting back to the basics. Running as a concerned parent, he talks of healing America's families through intimate programs.
Kids are being raised by one parent, or they're being raised in front of television, and we think that in order to heal the family, we have to go back to the roots and really help people on an in-depth level to start to understand how to do relationships and what things internally are blocking them from doing healthy relationships.
He also stands up for the environment and educational reform.
What we think is at least a third of the American curriculum, whether at an elementary school, a high school, or a collegiate level, needs to be volunteer work out in the community.
And his family backs him all the way.
They said when I said present.
Up like a slide. As First Lady, Liz Schriner says she would still be a full-time mom while taking on several social concerns.
My concerns would be about women's issues, everything from violence through to educating our children.
And even though they say tax cuts and foreign affairs are critical to the presidency, the Schriners say leading the nation is also about leading families to a healthy life.
And you see the country right now, we're getting an A in economic growth, but when it comes to life and social issues, whether it is a breakup of the family, or it is abject poverty in the inner city, or drugs, or violence, we're getting a D-. We think if you heal the family, you'd heal the country.
And from here, the Schriner family will head down to Southern California, then over to New Mexico and Arizona, then back to the Midwest for some of the primaries, and they say they will be on the road every day until November. Dan, back to you.
Shelley, does he honestly think he can win?
He says he knows he'll win. That was his comment to me.
Good for him. All right, we'll see. Thanks very much, Shelley. Schriner was a newspaper reporter before he dropped everything to run for president. Says he got the idea for a whistle-stop campaign about 4 years ago while he was studying a series of grassroots organizations all across the country.
TV, your 24-hour news source.
You can call him a trailblazer. He is making the rounds and could be coming to your neighborhood asking for your vote. He'll tell you about one Ohio man's dream to become. Republican presidential frontrunner George W. Bush cruised into Columbus for a $1,000 a plate fundraiser. And tonight, this man rolled into town in his 1974 conversion van to try to win your vote for president. Now, you wouldn't recognize him on the street. You probably don't even know his name. But Joe Schriner says it's only a matter of time until you do. This is not your normal presidential campaign, but Joe Schriner is not your normal guy.
I ran for president of the United States.
A few months ago, Joe sold his house in Ripley, Ohio, packed up his little boy, his little girl, and his wife, and set out to prove that he could become president.
We look at it sort of in a David and Goliath fashion.
This small-town man is sticking to his roots, traveling the back roads with his family.
See, when we started, nobody outside of Brown County, Ohio knew us, and now a whole lot of people know us.
Joe's campaign began in the 13 original colonies. Now he and his family are moving west, winning one vote at a time. Their message is simple. Get back to the basics. Get rid of the excess and help those in need. And as you can tell, he practices what he preaches. This is the Schriner family home. Pretty close quarters for 4 people, but Joe says it has everything they need to live, and they like it that way.
When we get to the White House, this has been the big joke between my wife and I. Because that house is so big and we ask people to scale back, we might just plug into the White House with a van as opposed to move it into it.
Now, Joe and his family plan to live in that van until next November when the elections roll around, and he truly believes that he can win. He says Americans are ready for a regular Joe to run the country.
And now a whole lot of people know us.
Joe plans on spending the next 14 months on the road winning votes. Joe's running on the Republican ticket. Just to do a little comparison, Joe's budget is $4,500. George W. Bush, the frontrunner, is campaigning with a $54 million budget so far.
Columbiana's #1 primetime newscast. Fox 59 News at 10.
A candidate you've never heard of visited the Circle City today with his unique message. Joe Schriner calls himself an average Joe candidate. The Ohio man is traveling across the country in a van that displays his campaign slogan. He handed out campaign material on the Circle with his family. He says people are receptive to his grassroots presidential campaign.
They resonate not only to the grassroots projects and the models that are in place, but they also have an affinity towards someone that at this point maybe isn't politically connected, but is just trying to be out there doing the right thing.
To put it in perspective, Schriner compares his campaign to the movie
Today at 5 on News 8.
Well, he's just an average Joe, but he wants to be your next president. Joe Schriner is his name. He's from Ohio, and he's traveling the country with his wife and 2 kids looking for votes. The Republican candidate says he can't afford to print his last name on the banners, so he just uses Joe. But he says it should take more than just money to be your next president.
It looks as if you're almost at a point where you can buy your way into the White House, you know, and we don't think that's the way that it should be. We think that it should happen on somebody's platform. And so we're all about showing America that you can get your message out for a whole lot less than 70 or 80 million bucks.
By the way, the campaign trail is nothing new to Joe Schriner. He's been traveling the country on and off for the past 8 years.
Joe Schriner. My name's Joe Schriner. I'm running for President of the United States.
Standing at the crossroads of America is presidential hopeful Joe Schriner. 6 months ago, Schriner and his wife Liz packed up their kids, Sarah and Joseph, and sold their home in Ohio.
We left home with a small motorhome that we travel in and $1,000.
They started with what they call a Liberty tour of the 13 original colonies and are now headed on Route 40 with a stop in Terre Haute to spread their message of family values and bringing government back to the citizens.
There's a lot of people that sit around in their living room saying, gee, I could run the country better than this, you know, and so we're just a couple from the Midwest that decided, well, we can run the country better than this.
It hasn't been limos and planes for the Shriners. For the last 6 months, Joe's been heading his campaign out of this small motorhome, spreading his message across the state.
But it hasn't always been easy on the family.
Every 5 minutes we were ready to quit. But we kind of got through that now, and we have a routine, and it's a lot easier now, so, but it's still hectic.
What are people's general reaction when they see you on the streets and you hand them a flyer?
Sometimes they say, President of what?
And sometimes they find it just plain hard to believe.
You're seriously running for president?
I'm seriously running for president.
But believe it or not, the Shriners aren't going to quit. They're taking their motorhome across the country, and they hope all the way to the White House.
I really think that we're going to win.
In Terre Haute, I'm Mary Jo Perino for Action 10 News.